Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on the latest Trump tariffs threat as the premiers meet in PEI. But first, addressing grievances.
I think it's recognizing that the way we were going wasn't working. It was heading to a major national unity crisis. I recognized it, the Prime Minister recognized it, and I think we found a pathway that is a pragmatic one to address both of our needs.
The Premier at a major North American summit on contending with the issue of separation, and while Danielle Smith works with the federal government on foundational changes to further resource development, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has named Alberta MP Dane Lloyd as his party's referendum lead. And the Member of Parliament for Parkland joins us now. Mr. Lloyd, welcome to Alberta Primetime, sir.
Well, thanks for having me on Alberta Primetime. It's great to be here.
All right. Now, your task is to make the case for a stronger Alberta within a united Canada. What does it mean to you to front the Conservative Party's response to this Alberta referendum question on separation?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, we're patriots. We believe in our country, but I'm an Alberta Member of Parliament. And for the past 10 years, we've had a federal government that's put roadblocks in the way of getting our energy projects built and many other things that have been against the values of Albertans. And so we have to champion those values. We have to fight to get those reforms. But at the same time, it doesn't mean we sacrifice the country.
How about the importance of the role? Where do you see this ranking on the list of responsibilities that you've undertaken in nearly a decade as a Member of Parliament?
Well, I mean, obviously, when we're talking about an issue like our country and the integrity of our country, it's a very serious responsibility. And I'm going into this role as a happy warrior. I'm here to listen to all sides. It's not about us versus them. It's about getting Albertans back on board, especially the Albertans who are frustrated with Confederation, mostly frustrated with an Ottawa knows best mentality. You know, when I talk to folks at the doors, they're not frustrated with their fellow Canadians. They're frustrated with Ottawa. So how can we deal with these issues in Ottawa so that we can bring Canadians closer together?
Was this a responsibility you saw coming? How prepared were you for Pierre Poilievre's letter to land on your desk?
Well, I think, you know, one of the reasons why I was chosen is because I was elected to serve as the Alberta Caucus Chair. We have over 30 Conservative MPs from Alberta. Obviously, it's one of the heartlands of conservatism in this country, and so I was surprised, but I was honored to take on this role. Obviously, it's a big responsibility and it's a lot of work, but I'm happy to do it.
All right. So, in doing it, how do you plan to convince Albertans that they need to vote to stay in Canada? What's your message in a nutshell?
My message is that Canada is an inheritance that has been given to us by the generations who came before us. And we have a responsibility and a duty to pass on that inheritance to future generations. We are Canadians. It is our identity. And let's remember the sacrifices that have been made by our ancestors to make this great country. And does that mean there's no issues that we're facing in this country? Absolutely, there are issues. We need to deal with these issues. We need to deal with Alberta's frustrations. But you know, the thing is, Mike, is that the frustrations that Albertans have are the frustrations that many Canadians across the country have. And if we deal with those frustrations, we're going to make the country stronger, not just Alberta.
How tricky a trail will this be to navigate in areas of the province, even within Conservative Party ranks, where there is support for Alberta independence?
Well, I think it's a delicate matter. I think the absolute wrong approach we can take is try to use fear to get people to vote against this referendum. I think we need to put forward a positive message that this country can be better, this country can be stronger, that we can deal with the issues that Albertans have and have a better future for our children and our grandchildren. And I think bringing people together through this positive message is exactly the right approach and not a fear approach.
As you pointed out a moment ago, you're also the party's Alberta Caucus Chair. How much support do you rally from federal Conservative MPs in the province as you take this on?
Well, look, I mean, I view it as, you know, I might have been given this role, but every Alberta Conservative MP, every MP across this country has a role to play in fighting for the unity of our country. And frankly, our leader, Pierre Poilievre, has been an absolute leader on this over the past number of months. He's spoken out very publicly about our love for Canada and the need to keep this country together. And so it's a team effort. And I have the full support of my Alberta Conservative colleagues to stand up for our country and to get a decisive result in this referendum we're having this fall.
But we started the conversation off on that clip of the Premier. How do you reflect on Alberta's efforts to work with the Carney government and turn the West Coast pipeline proposal into a reality? To what degree do you throw support behind those efforts as a means of showing Alberta remaining in Canada works?
Well, I would say I support Premier Danielle Smith in her efforts to get a pipeline built, particularly to the West Coast. And I think, it's a positive development, but why does the Alberta government have to jump through hoops that no other province has asked to jump through? We have to accept a higher industrial carbon tax. We have to accept a massive carbon capture agreement just to get a pipeline built. And this is a pipeline that's not just going to benefit Alberta, it's going to benefit all Canadians. So the fact is that we've had 10 years of a Liberal government that has prevented these pipelines from getting built. Now we're finally talking about getting pipelines built, but at this point, it's just an illusion. We need to see actual substantial commitments and substantial progress from Mark Carney and this Liberal government.
Okay, how are you preparing to engage with Albertans on this? Do you hit the road? Do you travel the province to spread your party's message?
Absolutely. So I'm doing roundtables. We're currently planning on many roundtables across the province. Look, people are writing to me every day. I just had a great householder that went out. I'm getting feedback from my constituents. The feedback's overwhelmingly in support of keeping our country together. Do people have frustrations? Absolutely. And we're not here to ignore people who are separatists. We need to listen to all sides because if we ignore people and we just keep dismissing them, then we're not going to deal with the real seed issues that are leading towards separation in not just Alberta, but in other provinces. So let's have this conversation, but let's keep this country together when we vote on October 19th.
Maybe as a final question, prior to politics, you served as a reservist in the Canadian military. How do you see that experience ultimately shaping the narrative that you will bring to this role?
Well, I'm actually still serving as a reservist. I'm actually a captain in the Governor General's Foot Guards. I'm taking a bit of leave so I can focus on the importance of this new role this fall. But I think, something that the military teaches, organizational planning, having a strong mission statement and working backwards from that mission statement and achieving tangible outcomes. And I think for anyone who's listening, a military career is an absolutely a stellar way to learn leadership and to get real life skills that can be helpful in all aspects of life.
All right. We'll have to leave it there for time. Appreciate your time this evening, Mr. Lloyd. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
That's Parkland MP Dane Lloyd, the Conservative Party's newly named referendum lead for Alberta. From the latest Trump tariffs turmoil to the Premier's meeting in PEI and the naming of an Alberta MP to lead the referendum response for federal Conservatives. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, former Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman and Barry Morishita, former leader of the Alberta Party and a former mayor of Brooks. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the dominant story of the day, that being the latest volley in the Trump administration's trade war with Canada. The Prime Minister says he spoke with the U.S. President this morning.
We agreed to intensify negotiations in the coming weeks, and the team and myself look forward to doing that. As always, Canadians, governments, business, labor will stand together to build Canada strong and to have a trading relationship with our North American partners.
U.S. President has signed off on new 50% tariffs on a long list of Canadian goods, including dairy products, alcohol, hockey sticks, clothing, paper products. The Americans call it retaliation for supply management, reciprocal tariffs, and provinces taking U.S. booze off store shelves. The tariffs are to take hold August 19th, and there will be no exemptions for goods covered under CUSMA. Chris, for many of these latest tariffs came from out of the blue. What do you see the U.S. president looking to accomplish here?
Well, I think it's a political move. I think he's appealing to U.S. voters. Don't forget these midterms are coming up in November. He's trying to say that he's defending their interests and Canadians are negotiating unfairly. So that's his general message. Also, he's trying to blame Canada for the stall in the U.S.-Canadian negotiations. So I think that's how our Prime Minister's responding, saying, hey, we are willing to discuss the details. This is a very complex thing. You don't solve these trade negotiations in public. President Trump has chosen to put it into the public sphere for political reasons rather than do the actual hard work of negotiations.
Very surprised to see the Prime Minister coming to the microphone, speaking out with more than maybe just issuing a statement. What might that suggest in approach?
Well, I think the Prime Minister is taking it very seriously because, President Trump has been known to do things, make pronouncements, and then, be really unaware of the consequences. I think to the point about it being very political, it's political for Prime Minister Carney as well. He has to be seen as being strong. He has to be seen as being, leading the charge and building a better trade relationship with the U.S., which is very difficult under the circumstances we find ourselves. So I think you're going to see a lot more of him in the coming weeks if Trump continues to make those kinds of bombastic statements.
Chris, what do you read from Mark Carney's response? And surprised there isn't a harsher tone coming from the PM.
I think the Prime Minister wants to be conciliatory all the time. He can leave the hard statements to some of the premiers. I think we always need to have the door open to continue talks and continue to negotiations. So I think he doesn't want to make public hardline stands, which might shut down future discussions.
All right. Now, as this latest tariff spat plays out, the premiers began their annual meeting today, and Ontario's Doug Ford came out swinging.
We need a plan from the Prime Minister to come in, and if these talks fail in 29 days, we need to hit him back as hard as we can. I'm tired of the bully trying to take our lunch money all the time.
The provincial and territorial leaders will be meeting over the next few days in Prince Edward Island, and the Prime Minister initially expected to join them tomorrow. In his comments, Doug Ford says Canada can't keep rolling over, can't back down, and that a full Team Canada approach is needed. Barry, to what degree do you see this latest Trump tariffs escalation turning the annual Premiers meeting on its head?
Well, it's certainly going to be front and center. And I think to Chris's point that, while the premiers can kind of be the agitator and be a little more aggressive, Prime Minister has to keep the door open. Mr. Trump is famous for wanting to get along with people, being praised. In one-on-one negotiations, he does best when he thinks you're praising him. You've seen him get awards that don't exist, those kinds of things, but they appeal to Mr. Trump, and I think Prime Minister Carney is being very strategic about that. As far as the premiers go, I think we've seen in the past where there's been some really good working together, but some very blunt talk about what to do next, and I'm hopeful that the premiers will be aggressive, and then the Prime Minister will use his skills to negotiate and continue to move that trade agreement forward.
Now, Chris, not all of the provinces have been banning the sale of U.S. alcohol, notably Alberta. How do you see that influencing discussions behind the closed doors of this Premier's meeting and Doug Ford's call for the Team Canada approach and everything being on the table?
Well, what it does is it highlights the fact that we don't have a united front among our premiers. So what's important to Doug Ford in Ontario isn't important to Danielle Smith in Alberta. And that happens right across in a series of issues. So when you have provincial leaders that having a strong role and not promoting a united front, like great that they all get to express their opinions, but how do we come up with a united front that everybody will speak up and defend? There's a lot. Clearly, the American approach is to appeal to the provinces that are sympathetic to them. So a couple of times yesterday, the American ambassador has complimented Saskatchewan and Alberta. Specifically and excluded others. So, their tactic is to promote and create division among Canadian premiers. And, the premiers and the prime minister have to present a united front going forward in terms of their response.
Barry, let's pick up on some of that. U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra in our province on Monday, toasting the Canada-U.S. relationship with a shot of American whiskey, speaking about the shared relationship between the two countries to reach a deal. How does that play, coming only a few short hours ahead of the latest Trump escalation?
Well, I think it doesn't play well for Canadians generally speaking, and as Chris said, there's certain areas in the country where the issues are a little bit different, and therefore the premiers are trying to position themselves politically too. But I do think, as Chris has mentioned, there has to be a way for the premiers to come together and face these challenges a little bit more united, in the sense that what can be good for one area needs to be good for the whole country. These issues that that the Trump administration is pushing, where they're getting involved in kind of domestic politics in order to get their way, has to be ignored to a certain extent, and the premiers have to get together and do what's best for Canada. And I'm really hopeful that will be the outcome, although you're certainly bound to see some dissension by the time the week is over.
All right, Chris, last question to you on this one. Where does all of this leave Alberta? Premier Smith was speaking at that same North American summit in Edmonton on Monday, pitching the sale of Alberta oil to the U.S., customers south of the border.
Well, I think Premier Smith is always going to do what's best for Alberta. It's another way to ask for more support for pipelines. We have an unfinished pipeline in the U.S. That's been invested in 5 years ago. How does that move forward to increase the flow of goods to the U.S. and the sale of more oil? So I think the important thing that Albertans have to look for, are we going to be compensated fairly for any oil we sell to the U.S.? Because before we had the expanded TMX, we were selling Alberta oil at a significant discount. And how does Alberta benefit, and we're the owners of the resource, will we get fair value for our money when more oil is shipped to the U.S.?
All right. Time for us to take a bit of a break. But when we come back, federal Conservatives tap an Alberta MP to lead the party's separation referendum response. Our panel picks up on that conversation in a moment. Welcome back. Off the top this evening, we heard from the Edmonton area MP named the federal Conservative Party's referendum lead for Alberta. Chris, what do you make of Dane Lloyd as the choice for this role? What do you see the member for Parkland bringing to the table?
I hadn't previously heard MP Dane Lloyd speak. He hasn't been a prominent part of the Conservative Party of Canada response to this point, but I was quite impressed. He is clearly proud of his record of service for Canada. He's a fairly young person. He speaks very well, but he had a very balanced approach. And I think his approach will appeal. It's a different thing. We usually hear from Pierre Poilievre or Andrew Scheer, and it's always very partisan. But he's a well-spoken young man, and he says he's open to listening to all points of view, and he thinks he's committed, or he says he's committed to the success of our country going forward. I think that's it's a tremendous approach. He's got the right attitude, and I hope he's able to maintain that through the discussion to the end of the referendum.
Barry, what's your take on the role now set out for Dane Lloyd? He's been tasked with keeping Canada united while recognizing what Pierre Poilievre's letter to him calls the legitimate concerns and grievances that Albertans have.
I think, as Chris said, it's a balanced approach. It's whether they can maintain it. And even in the interview, you have to be careful. Even Mr. Lloyd kind of got into kind of the grievance message. And while I think there should be a constructive conversation about what Alberta needs and what Albertans are looking for within Canada, I think the Conservatives have a very tight line to walk about how to be the opposition party, but then how to do what's best for the country. And I think Mr. Lloyd's approach in terms of listening, understanding, being very, very clear about his position in terms of where Alberta belongs and that Canada should stay together should be helpful. They just have to be wary of the politics of division and whether some of the grievance issues start to overwhelm the pro-Canada issue. But Mr. Lloyd seems very capable of being able to do that, as that interview showed.
Chris, your take on the message that Dane Lloyd is to carry forward?
I thought it was refreshing. I thought it signals a change in the Conservative Party of Canada tone. I think that's overdue. And we do need to have prominent Conservative Party of Canada MPs speaking strongly for Canada without the grievance tone.
Barry, how challenged do you see Dane Lloyd being in bringing this message to Alberta Conservatives who may already be sold on separation, especially in rural areas of the province?
Well, I think Mr. Lloyd has the opportunity to entertain that audience and make the case for Canada with those Albertans. This has been a gradual increase. There's been, a few loud voices that have kind of taken this message and run with it. But by no means, I don't think it's a majority. I think Mr. Lloyd has a great opportunity to kind of quell that and put the facts to people, use that measured tone to communicate to people who are thinking about voting in favor of the referendum to say there's a much better option. I also think it's important, very interesting that Mr. Lloyd's chosen. As Chris mentioned, he's a bit of a fresh face. He's younger. He's got a service background. And I think he adds some legitimacy and has a lot more room to maneuver than Mr. Poilievre would have in the same context. So it's going to be really interesting if they can stay on message. And if they do, I think it is a positive thing for the Conservative Party across Canada as well and their fortunes in the subsequent federal elections. I think it repositions them to be a lot more favorable to other parts of Canada as well.
Chris, to pick up on that point, how much of an opportunity is this for the federal Conservatives to potentially shore up support with Albertans opposed to separation? Drive a wedge where the efforts of the Carney government are concerned.
I think it is a significant opportunity. Since Mr. Carney's, since the federal election, Mr. Carney's popularity has improved. Mr. Poilievre's popularity has declined amongst Canadians. So how do they reverse the flow? And clearly, the Pierre Poilievre message is not resonating with Canadians to grow support. And if you're a federal political party, that should be a concern for you. So what it's saying is the message isn't working. It's time for a change. This is an opportunity for the Conservative Party of Canada to change their messaging to something more positive.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there for time. Great to see you both. Thank you kindly for this.
Welcome. Thank you, Michael.
Now, here are a few responses to a story posted by CTV News, and it is about President Trump announcing 50% tariffs on select Canadian products. Snoots on the ground wonders, just like the last 100 times he announced tariffs. Curious Pharmacy writes, imagine treating your biggest trading partner like that. Dungus asks, wasn't Carney supposed to deal with this guy? When is that going to happen? Snowpiercer notes, the president still hasn't figured out that tariffs put on Canadian products cost Americans more. And Stardust says Trump's a bully, and like all bullies, he will continue targeting until others fight back. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, it was just over a year ago. Naheed Nenshi was elected an MLA in Edmonton, but he'll next seek a seat in Calgary. We'll hear from the NDP leader on that and more on Wednesday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone. From all of us at Alberta Primetime, thank you for watching, and join us again next time.